Well, George, thank you for such a great day, day one. We even had the new president-elect join us today. What a nice surprise. Thank you for having us here in Bucharest. A very successful first day. Congratulations. I think we're ready to get started with this night owl session. My name is Maia OTARASHVILI. I'm the director of the Eurasia program at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Our organization is very grateful to be invited from the United States to be a part of this event. So tonight's discussion is entitled A Light Discussion Through Tough Topics, Putin and Putinism, Kremlin's Militarism and Ideology. And this event, this discussion is organized in cooperation with the Caucasus Institute in Armenia. We're actually joined by Andrei ILLARIONOV, who is the director of the Caucasus Institute in Armenia. I will introduce our first speaker. Andrei ILLARIONOV is joining us via VTC. Thank you so much for being with us today. He's a senior fellow of the Center for Security Policy and the former chief economic advisor to both Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin and President Vladimir Putin from 2000 to 2005. His full bio is available on the Agenda app. And I'm joined by Alexander ISKANDARYAN here in person. As I said, he is the director of the Caucasus Institute in Armenia. He's a political scientist, and he is focused on the former Soviet space, including the South Caucasus, Northern Caucasus, and Central Asia. So this is going to be a very interesting discussion. I have asked both of our speakers to speak for a few minutes first, and then we'll open it up for a discussion. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Mr. ILLARIONOV. Thank you again for joining us today.
So thank you very much for inviting me to this particular session and to the conference. I would like to underline, first of all, importance of the sessions under this particular title. Finally, after 3+ years of full-scale war, people around the world started to understand basic nature of the crisis that we are facing. And in this regard, I have 5 main points that I would like to share with you. The first one, what are we dealing with is not war in Ukraine. It is Russian-Ukrainian war. It is Russian aggression against Ukraine. But it is not only Russian aggression against Ukraine. This is a part of much larger global war that is being waged by Putin, Kremlin, and Russian elite and Russian state right now, not only against Ukraine, but as well against Georgia, against Moldova, against other former Soviet republics, which now we should call them front states, because they are located on the front. And they became targets of aggression from Imperial Russia. This is the very first and very important point. Second one, this war, I mean global war that is being waged by Putin, not only against immediate neighbors, but also in the Middle East, in African Sahel, and he's ready to support potential military invasion of China against Taiwan, or probably something on the Korean Peninsula. All of that is a reflection of a very deep mindset, belief, ideology of Putin personally and Putin's entourage. This is correctly called imperialism, and this is much more important even than militarism. This is the imperial mindset of Putin and his people. It is very well-known phrase that has been said, Putin semi-jokingly, Russia's borders do not nowhere ends. So this is once again, it is like a semi-joke, but it's a reflection of deep belief and a deep ideology of Putin personally, and not only Putin personally, that he has a right and even obligations to intervene, to wage aggressions against other countries. And that is why there is no any stable, agreed, internationally recognized borders for Putin's Russia and for Putin's personally. So next point, very important one, whether this imperialism is the imperialism of Putin personally, or it is imperialism of much larger matter, imperialism of Russia's nation. And as we all know, there is a big debate going on to what extent those ideas of imperial expansion being shared by Russian population and to which extent. We don't know, we can start discuss this issue at this session, but we probably will not come to the final conclusion. I can tell that in the 90s, we saw, based on sociological polls, that so-called imperial perceptions of the public were gradually diminishing, and Russian public started to recognize that other countries of the former Soviet Union are not part of Russia, but independent state. And this process went reasonably well until year 2008, until aggression against Georgia. And after that, this trend has been reversed around year 2008 first, around year 2014 with aggression against Ukraine, with occupation and annexation of Crimea, again and again in year 2022. So now these ideas of imperialism became much wider spread than it was, let's say, in year 2006, year 2007. My first point, how to deal with imperialism, this imperialism, with Putin's imperialism and with Russia's imperialism. Well, we used to hear that many people in the Western capitals do suggest, for example, ceasefire in Ukraine, in the Russian-Ukrainian war. The question is whether ceasefire of any kind would stop, would destroy Putin's imperialism or Russian imperialism. The answer is very clear, no. Whether any truce or any treaty with Putin would stop his imperial ambitions. The answer is very clear, no. Whether bringing Putin to the negotiation table destroyed his imperial ambitions. Definitely no. Whether any negotiations, any potential benefits from any economic deals with the United States or with anybody else would stop imperial ambitions of Putin? The answer is very clear, no. Another question would be raised, whether sanctions against Russian economy of any kind, even the harshest sanctions we could think of, whether they will be able to destroy, to stop Putin's imperial ambitions. The answer is very clear, no. The basic line is very simple, even if it is not a very nice one. There is no non-military solution to this war and to Putin's imperial ambitions and to Putin's imperial policy. That is why President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, for anybody else who are repeating that there is no military solution to this war are deeply wrong. There is no non-military solution. There is only one solution to this war and to Russian/Putin's imperial ambition. And this answer is military defeat. That is why the only reasonable discussions that might be undertaken is how to organize and deliver military defeat to the Russian troops at this front and at any other front. This is only one solution to stop expansion of Russian/Putin imperialism around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's turn it over to you, Alexander, and then I have quite a few follow-up questions for you, sir.
Okay. Can you listen to me? First of all, allow me thank the organizers of the conference, Strategy Center, which I have been attending with pleasure for many years now. It's a great honor for me to speak at a forum of this level. And you know, Romania is a country of considerable importance for the Black Sea region, and I value the opportunity to hear the views on Romanian and non-Romanian colleagues here. And of course, it's always fun to visit your beautiful city. Within the topic of today's conference, I would like to propose an additional perspective on the war in Ukraine. Most of the time, we look at the Ukraine war from either Kiev or Moscow. In fact, scholarly as well as political discourses about this war are either Kiev-centric or Moscow-centric, regardless of where the speaker comes from. It can be London or Berlin or Washington or wherever. Since my professional focus is on the post-Soviet space, or whatever this space has become over the years, today I would like to look at Russia's war in Ukraine from a different perspective, that of countries that used to be part of USSR. We're well aware that the significance of this war is much broader than Russian-Ukrainian relations. Andrei told about that. It has polarized the world. It has affected European countries in so many ways that it will take years for them to rely their policies, to replenish their budgets, to integrate refugees, etc. However, as a result of this war, some countries will never be same again. Some things that define them have changed, already changed radically. This is, of course, true for Russia and Ukraine. What I'm going to argue here today is that it is also true for other former Soviet countries, including ones that do not border in either Ukraine or Russia, as for my country, for example, Armenia. Why did this happen? Arguably because Russia's ideological justification for its war against Ukraine relies on two dissimilar and even conflicting from time to time paradigms. One is geopolitical. Russia is fighting against the entire geopolitical West, what they call collective West. Not just against Ukraine moved to become westernized. It's basically a world war, except is so far geographically limited. Russia's other driving force is a nationalistic paradigm. Russia is fighting this war to protect ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Ukraine or wider the Russian identity, language and culture. In extreme forms, this paradigm goes as far as denying an existence of Ukrainian identity and culture. Some Russian nationalists openly say that Ukrainians are really Russians, corrupted by the West, by Nazism or whatever. Putin said in one of his speeches that while he could reconcile with the existence of Ukrainian state, he cannot reconcile with the existence of Ukrainian as a nation, as a culture. Both these paradigms are perceived by post-Soviet countries as threats. The new Russia can decide to fight against the West in the territory of Tajikistan or to protect Russian speakers in Kyrgyzstan. This is entirely up to the Kremlin. These threats have overhauled the architecture of the post-Soviet space. The changes do not just concern the geopolitical trends or the security architecture, but also most other areas, from economy and migration to education and languages. This said, we cannot predict when and how this war will end and which further changes can take place. However, the ones that have already occurred are radical and largely irreversible. Before 2022, beginning of war, I would have sounded ridiculous if I predict that Georgia and Kyrgyzstan would soon have significant Russian diasporas, or that more and more post-Soviet states would radically change their linguistic and educational politics to exclude or minimize Russian language and culture, or that they would start a feverish search for ways to bypass Russia when transporting goods and people, or that Armenia would purchase weapons from India and France rather than Russia. The CSTO would lose most or all of its supposed functionality. China and Europe would be discussing projects to build a middle corridor. All this has, in fact, taken place, and much more. Moldovans and Romanians, too, by the way, are understandably concerned that Russian troops may turn up on their borders. Estonians are more than ever worried about the political preferences of the residents of Narva, almost 90% of whom are Russians by ethnicity or Russian speaking. What matters most is that all these fears will remain relevant regardless of the outcome of the war. Whatever happens, there is no return to the pre-2022 situation. Moreover, changes in various spheres will proceed in the same direction, changing more and more the former Soviet nations. Geography plays a huge role in these processes. The geographical position of a country in relation to Russia and Ukraine determines its policies towards external actors. As a result, former Soviet nations choose different foreign policy orientations as Russia's toxicity disconnect the countries of the post-Soviet space from each other. It's one thing to border the European Union and quite another to border Afghanistan. With this war in Ukraine as a powerful catalyst, former Soviet countries started going their separate ways at the post-Soviet space disintegrated. Even its name is no longer relevant, I would say. At best, we can call it post-Soviet space. Admittedly, such trends were manifest in some countries before 2022, but overall post-Soviet nations gravitated towards Russia. Now they gravitate away from it. The states of the former USSR are looking for opportunities for cooperation outside the former USSR. And even a hypothetical end to the war will not stop this process, because while a strong, victorious Russia is threatening, so is a weak Russia that has lost some of its leverage and influence and is looking to get it back. Strictly speaking, the Ukrainian war is a manifestation of Russia's weakness, not strength. According to the ideology of Eurasianism, that is the connection, the shared identity of the nations of the former USSR is disappearing. What Russia considers to be a move to reunite the post-Soviet nations is in fact dividing them. The Ukraine war was triggered a new wave of disintegration, this time that of the post-USSR. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. ILLARIONOV, I want to ask you a follow-up question. You said that Putin, it's this imperial mindset of Putin and his people. I think your message was quite chilling and very direct, right? That there is no other solution to this war other than a military solution. But you talked about the military imperial mindset of Putin and his people. You're also very well aware that we're essentially completely isolated from Russia, and that's been going on for quite a few years. So it's becoming hard for us to read the situation inside Russia and understand Putin's inner circle. I'm hoping you can give us a little glimpse into who surrounds him and whether or not they really do have the same mindset as he does, especially the younger generations of Russian political elites. I guess ultimately what I'm asking is Putinism going to outlive Putin? Once he is gone, let's assume dead, would that ideology remain alive in his current allies, especially those who are younger? And then I want to ask you a second question because I'm mindful of the time. You said there's only a military solution to this war. Maybe you could be a little more specific about what a military solution would look like, a defeat that is actually a defeat for Putin. So does that mean Ukraine getting 100% of its territory back? Does that mean defeating Putin on the front lines, pushing them back to Russia's borders, but then also somehow perhaps Ukraine occupying some of Russian territory? I mean, there are many scenarios what a military defeat might look like, and also considering Ukraine's ambitions as to what a Ukrainian victory would look like. So, yeah, that's two questions I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maia, for your questions. As for the first one, I think at this moment it might be irrelevant. I mean, the question, and even discussing this question might be irrelevant. Why? There are two explanations. First one, the opinions of other people, meaning not Putin personally, and closest of his entourage, is unimportant in totalitarian regime. And today's political regime in Russia is totalitarian. So that is why it is essentially irrelevant what kind of views all those people, even if they would be 98%, do have concerning foreign policy. In totalitarian regime, those voices are not heard, and if it is necessary, they will be punished, and the repressions will be waged against those people. The next question is, how long Putin might stay there? We don't know, but he's relatively young. According to his official biography, he's only 72 years old. I know that the leader of Zimbabwe stayed in his position until 95 years old. It gives us not a forecast, cannot give such a forecast. It gives us some flavor of what might happen. And that is why we are forced to deal with Putin, not with somebody after Putin. And how long we are forced to deal with Putin, don't know. So that is why, just not to be relaxed, not to try to find easy ways, we have no other ways but to deal with Putin, with his troops, with his army, with his FSB, with his GRU, both Russia, Ukraine, in post-Soviet states, in Europe, and everywhere else. So that is why we tried to do it back then, year 2007, when there was an attempt to withdraw Estonian government. We tried to think that it will finish soon in year 2008, when there was a Russian conflict. We were thinking that it would be long enough in year 2014, when there was Crimea and Donbass, again and again and again. We need to stop to play this game, to be responsible and honest. It might be very long with us. That is why we need to deal with nobody but. Second, could you remind me your second question?
The second
What
question
about
was,
military defeat?
what would the
Okay.
military defeat exactly look like? For it to be satisfactory or
Right.
for it to be enough to stop Putin?
Okay, there are different definitions of military defeat, so, or victory to be correct. So that those who expect that Ukrainian troops would march along Red Square in Moscow probably expect, there is nothing to expect such scenario. What kind of scenario might be expected? And expected in the cases that would lead to the most reasonable outcome of this war. And the most reasonable outcome is not even restoration of full territorial integrity of Ukraine, though that would be the most just way to do it. The most important one is to achieve such a situation in which there will be guaranteed that Putin or anybody, even after Putin, would not try to repeat his imperial aggression against Ukraine, against Russia, against Baltic countries, against Moldova, against anyone else. And such security guarantees can be achieved only through military defeat of Putin's troops. What kind of military defeat? It came to my mind the result of Soviet-Polish War of 1919 and 1921 of the army near Lviv and on Vistula River near Warsaw. It came to my mind the defeat in the winter war between Soviet Union and Finland. Even technically, it was a defeat of Finland, but the losses that Soviet Union is taking in the Soviet-Finnish War of 1939-1940 was such level, and especially 6 defeat in the summer of 1944 during Summer War on the Soviet-Finnish theater of the Second World War was at such gravity that Stalin decided not to continue his imperial aggression against Finland and to rear Soviet troops onto the geography. Afghan war probably was not extremely victorious for Afghan people, but after more than 9 years of that war, the Politburo decided not to continue with war anymore. So that is why I'm thinking about such of the Russian troops, like during Soviet-Polish War, Soviet-Finnish War, Soviet-Afghan War, made Putin and all people around him to understand very clearly that they have no chance yet independence, sovereignty of Ukraine, total occupation of Ukraine or Kiev. That would be the best solution for him to stop this war.
Thank you very much. Alexander, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you gave us a really nice overview of what it feels like to be not in Ukraine, not within the EU, not in Russia, right? All the countries in the post-Soviet space that have to grapple with the new reality of this war. I want us to zoom in a little bit more and talk specifically about the case of Armenia. Can you describe for us Armenia's foreign policy calculus right now? How they are strategizing about their foreign policy posturing and what their goals are right now?
Thank you for your question. It's very easy to answer it. I mean Armenia, we're moving now from one myth to another. The previous myth, which exists from early 90s to 2020, I mean so-called Second Karabakh War, and 2023, I mean deportation of Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. The idea was that we have guarantees of security from Russians because we are members of CSTO, we have Russian base on our territory, etc., etc. They are our strategic partners. It didn't work. They didn't guarantee, they didn't come, they did what they did, and it finished as it finished, as you know. Now we're moving to another myth, that somebody else, the West, will help us to guarantee our security. Russians are busy in Ukraine, you have all this mess around, you have Iran as a neighbor, you have Middle East, not very far from our borders. Sometimes people even in Armenia, in their mental maps, don't have this map, you know. Border of Syria from border of my country is 300 kilometers. Just 300, very close. And the idea that somebody else will come and guarantee our security is new myth, you know, something which is coming as an idea of nowadays elites over media. This is more or less a state of affairs for now. Sure, it will change. We try to see the world around and try to live with the neighborhood we have. It's common for all Caucasus, I would say, for Georgians as well, for Azerbaijanis, sure. But now it's a time when you try to find some other solutions for security in the region, because Europe is far. It's very unfortunately very easy to explain. Ukraine have Russia from one side and Europe from another, Romania, Hungary, etc., Poland. We, Armenians, we have, and Georgians have Russian from one side, but on other side, instead of Europe, we have Iran and Turkey. So it's a bit complicated as it was last 3,000 years, but we'll manage somehow.
We're still here.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. We have enough time to open up for an audience Q&A, so please raise your hand if you have a question. Let's start with Shota here. I think we can bring you a microphone.
Hello, this is Shota Guineria, Baltic Defense College. I have one Russia question and I have one Armenia question. So my Armenia question is, what do you think happened during this war for Karabakh in terms of Russia? Was there a moment that Aliyev actually seized because Russia was consumed fully in Ukraine and didn't have capacity to do anything there, or it was just an agreement and a trade-off that they did? And if it was, in exchange of what? And my Russia question is basically, Mr. Illarionov very clearly outlined that the only way for achieving lasting peace in this war is the military defeat of Russia, which is nowhere in sight because it's not even being discussed. Nobody is even considering this as a remote option, so we're not actually looking at this option. So what is the alternative? What do you think can be the outcome short of Russia's defeat? And do you think that this new multipolar world and new multipolarity is something that actually Putin is very close to achieving? Because we know that starting from Primakov's time, that was the ultimate objective, to have a new sort of relationship with the West, which Russia would consider as a fairer relationship than the rules-based international order. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's start with you, Mr. Illarionov.
As I said, there is only two options that exist: the military defeat of Ukrainian troops or military defeat of Russian troops. There is no in between. There is no other third option. All other people who insist on negotiations, on ceasefire, on truce, on something, they're just trying to fool themselves. It is impossible. So that is why, among two options, military defeat of Ukraine with absolutely natural consequence of occupation of substantial portion of Ukraine, which Kiev, and with establishing concentration camp a la Gulag on the territory of occupied Ukraine, as it has been established in Donbass, in Crimea, and other occupied Ukrainian territories. I would prefer the other option, not to allow this to happen. Historically, we have seen several examples how it has been achieved. Recently, over the last 3+ years of this large-scale war, we've seen that Ukrainians were able to win the war over Black Sea. That particular part of the theater that destroyed approximately 1/3 of Russian Black Sea fleet and forced all other ships of the Black Sea fleet to fight in Novorossiysk, in Caucasus, seaports, and some other places. As for air battle, Russian planes do not fly over Ukraine. They do bomb the front lines, but they do not cross this line. So that is why, let's say, it's either that, 50-50. The problem with the land operations, as we all know, and the land operations are the most important ones, no doubt. But we've seen that Ukrainian troops were able to successfully launch and wage offensive Kharkiv offensive in September 2022, Kherson offensive in October-November 2022, and Kursk offensive in August 2024. Whether it is enough? Certainly not. But it shows that with necessary support, with necessary training, with necessary munitions, with necessary support from foreign friends and allies, and probably at some point with participation of regular foreign troops, Ukraine can achieve military defeat of Russian troops. And that is why, if it is not yet discussed, and if it is not yet considered, as it has been mentioned, the question, it is necessary to consider, it is necessary to discuss. And by the way, in year 2002, most of people who discuss this part of global war that has been launched by Putin, those people did discuss Ukraine victory. Compared to them, I am much more cautious. I am not using the term Ukrainian victory. I'm using a different term, military defeat of Russian troops, which has been achieved in the past, and it has been achieved by Ukrainians. It might be achieved, and it must be achieved.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to
Okay,
Armenia.
thank you for the question. I'm not the greatest supporter of conspirology theories in the world. I would say that Azerbaijan became too prepared to war approximately from 2004, 2005, when the oil prices became growing. The Azerbaijan became to reform their army with the help of Turkey, and Turkey is a member of NATO, by the way, from these early times as well. But before at least 2016, 2017, Mr. Putin could stop any aggression, any war, any conflict in our region by one telephone call, and he did it in 2016, the last time. Afterwards, now I would say this is not a case. At Aliyev's table, you have two telephones, not one. And which one is bigger and louder, that one which is to Moscow or another one which is to Ankara, God knows. So situation changed. I would say that 2020 was just mistake of Kremlin, because they came to the last call, they came to the Karabakh, they had their peacekeepers there. This was official, the agreement was signed by, not just by Prime Minister of Armenia and President of Azerbaijan, but President of Russia as well, Mr. Putin. But then I would say that this situation changed in 2023, when Azerbaijan has managed to deport all Armenians from NK, and this was because of Ukraine. I wouldn't say that it would be possible. I wouldn't say that 23 would be possible without 22. Russians were busy, in Ukraine, and nobody was going to have second war in the south. That's why they could do what they could do, and now situation dramatically changed. Dramatically, I mean that strategically, it's not about trade, not about communication, but strategically, Russians already are not there in our region. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. I think this was a really fascinating discussion, and I'm sorry we don't have more time to go on, but thank you all for joining us. And let's give an applause to our speakers. Thank you so much.